Welcome to the 50th anniversary celebration of the Cotsen Institute of Archaeology. My name is Jason DeLeon, and I am the director of the Institute as of November 1 this past year, and so excited to be here. Thank you. The Institute of Archaeology, the Cotsen Institute of Archaeology, was established in 1973, 1974 as an organized research unit of the University of California with the purpose of coordinating and developing all aspects of campus activities relating to archaeology. The scope of its interest reaches as far as there is something to recover from the soil, which is meaningful for the understanding of our cultural past. In the pursuit of this goal, we are creating here at UCLA something which is in line with the best archaeological tradition and yet is, at the same time, unique on the American scene. The crucial difference is that we can talk to each other, anthropologists and humanists, ecologists and classicists, historians and prehistorians, and so on. From this new school of thought is slowly emerging, which is giving flesh and blood to the ideal of a comprehensive, interdisciplinary reconstruction of the human past. We are truly an institute of archaeology, writ large, without parochial limitations of geography or methodology. Those words were written by Giorgio Bucciolati in 1974 in the first report about this place. And I think they still very, very much ring true. There are many, many people here in this room who have who over the decades have supported the Institute and helped ensure its success. Former president and CEO of Neutrogena Corporation, Lloyd E. Cotsen, was passionate about archaeology. His philanthropic impact at the Institute was transformative, and in recognition of his contribution, the university renamed its Institute of Archaeology to the Cotsen Institute of Archaeology in February of 2000. Lloyd passed away in 2017. With us today is his daughter, Corinna Cotsen, and Barry Munitz, president of the Cotsen Foundation, continuing Lloyd's generosity. So please, let's say. And I'm sad that Helly is not here, but she is with us on the Facebook, so I'm going to send some pictures in a minute so she can see what we're doing. The Directors Council at the Cotsen represents the Institute's most loyal supporters. And with us today are Debbie Arnold and Walt Zipperman, David Buchever, Dulcie Diedrich, and Ondine Bader, and last but not least, Charlie and Ellen Steinmetz, the Cotsen's biggest champions. We also want to give a shout out to Sebastian Bader, who is not here with us. He's in college, but he is the founder of our Teen Friends of Archaeology, which has been really active this year, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with them. One of our newest supporters is also with us today. Jim and Alan Harris endowed a fund for student support during the pandemic, and we haven't been able to acknowledge them publicly before today. They made a gift in honor of their mother, Arlene Harris, who was a member of Friends of Archaeology for over 4 decades and did fieldwork with Giorgio and Marilyn in Syria. So I want to thank them. We'll just take a moment to appreciate that. Patricia Olianansky has been a friend of archaeology for over 50 years and continues to support the Cotsen Institute. And I just want to recognize that long-term support. Amazing. Carol Leba was the Institute of Archaeology's press's first director and continued to edit publications until very recently. I want to just thank Carol. Many of you read our publication Back Dirt, and we want to acknowledge Doug Brotherton, who's been designing Back Dirt for over 2 decades. Joanne von Tilburg has been director of the Rock Art Archive since its inception and has taken many friends to Easter Island over her 4 decades of research, and we're excited to have her and Jan here today with us. And I just want to also end this little portion with utmost gratitude to Ernestine Elster, one of the first graduates and absolutely the heart and soul of this institute. The Cotsen Press also celebrates 50 years today, and the press has been recognized with many awards over various years and has produced some incredibly important publications for our discipline. And so I want to recognize the press and all the wonderful things that it's done. And there was Rondi. It's also her birthday today, so. It is now my pleasure to introduce Abel Valenzuela, our interim dean of social sciences here at UCLA.
Thank you, Jason. It's a pleasure. It's a distinct pleasure for me to be here. Thank you. So I've served in this role for about 1.5 years now, and it's been a huge pleasure, and I've learned a lot. And the learning space can be tricky to navigate in this role. I had colleagues reach out to me early in my appointment from this space. I've traveled. I've also been in different spaces on our campus. And so I'm sharing this with you because my presence here is more than duty. It really is about intellectual curiosity, of course, the celebration of the 50th anniversary. One of the most important things that I've done in my role was to appoint Jason as director, and I'm very pleased about that. And so I come here to say a few words. Words that come straight from the heart, and also I think bode well, not only for Cotsen, but certainly for my own engagement in this space, and what will be support in multiple ways that I've already done in my short term. This space is super important, not only for the past, but certainly for the contemporary. And so I want to go on record with those messages. So thank you, Jason. I know full well that I'm right before your meal, so let me get to some important comments. As we celebrate our 50th anniversary. We are all rightfully proud to be a part of UCLA and its continued excellence as the #1 public university in the nation. And so when we talk about the work of archaeology, we always say nobody comes close to what we do here, certainly in this part of the United States, and I think in part mostly because of anthropology, archaeology, but also classics, NELC, our strong interdisciplinary engagement. It's real. I know this quite well because of the work that I've been doing in the past 1.5 years. So in the college and in the Division of Social Science specifically, that pride, I think, extends to the excellence of our 18 departments. Excuse me. I know you weren't laughing at me. And to 17 research institutes and centers, of which 4 are ranked in the top 10, and I will get through this clearly. And now, 50 years after its founding, we can say with much pride that the UCLA Cotsen Institute of Archaeology has become the premier institute research organization dedicated to the creation, the dissemination, and the conservation of archaeological knowledge and heritage. For those involved with Cotsen in the early days and years, I doubt they could have imagined that their early efforts would lead to the Cotsen Institute becoming what it is today, one of the leading programs in the world with wide-ranging impacts in the field of archaeology. It's got a large endowment that we are dedicated to growing. It's an impressive space on our campus, and we're going to only make it better. Though I was not around in those early years, as I understand, there was no building, no endowment, no dedicated offices, no staff. The Cotsen office was simply wherever the current faculty director's office happens to be. First, it was Giorgio Bucciolati's office. Then it was Marek Poznański's office when he took over as director. From a small group of passionate volunteers evolved an organized group of friends of archaeology who, through their own sheer force of will and dedication, began creating programs and events, one of the purest examples of the power of community, multidisciplinary, interdisciplinary communities. The Cotsen Institute was in its second decade before it had its first staff member. Its second decade before its first staff member, who, believe it or not, had to share Marek's office because there was still not dedicated space. It is especially appropriate to say in this setting that the rest is history, and we're here in celebration of that history. Today, the Cotsen Institute houses two interdepartment degree programs, archaeology and conservation, that are leading programs in their field. We are investing FTE in this space. Both of these programs are only going to grow. My thanks to everyone, past and present, who dedicated themselves to making the Cotsen Institute what it is today. We can't do it alone. You are a perfect example of the power of resources and interest and coming together to build something that is lasting in perpetuity. In archaeology, research programs of the highest regard and impact are rarely matched to what we do here. I would now like to invite you to enjoy your lunch and the company of those around you. We'll have remarks a little bit later during the dessert portion of the meal. Thank you.
So what we're going to do right now is we are going to give some. Oh, that was Lady Harrington. We're going to give some time and space to our previous directors who we've asked to come and talk a little bit about their experiences. And before we do that, I also really this is like I'm competing with like way more interesting stuff right now. So, oh yeah. Okay. Before I introduce our next speaker, I also just want to send out my deepest gratitude to all of our staff who have worked so hard to make this event happen. And especially Michelle Jacobson, who has just made this whole thing possible, and she'll get mad at me for thanking her later. So, but she's really just been so great at just making this whole thing happen. So, our first person that we're going to have here during our post lunch is our very first director of the Cotsen, and that's Giorgio Bucciolati.
Well, thank you, Jason. As you were talking, as the dean were was talking before, it made me think we're kind of witnessing a relay race, and we just handed over the baton to Jason, and here I am to tell you about the beginning, where the baton started. There are 4 pillars, as it were, at the beginning of the Institute that made it all possible. The first pillar was the faculty. There were dissenting sort of voices and feelings among the faculty, particularly between the, let's say, more classically oriented archaeologists and those, especially in the anthropology department, who were more inclined into questions of methods and theory. And they were really at odds with each other, but they all shared a deep conviction that the Institute was an important thing to have. And they really worked to make it possible, and they asked for it. So that was really the first impulse. I would like especially to remember on the one side, Maria Gimbutas, and on the other, Clem Meehan. Maria Gimbutas in European archaeology and Clem in anthropology. And it was really a merging of interests where there were differences in way of approaching archaeology. I was very young, and so I didn't represent a threat to any of them. And it was one reason why I think I was asked to work on establishing the Institute. And incidentally, I think the dean owes it to me if you were here today, because I was asked to make a recommendation as to whether the Institute should be in humanities or in social sciences. I was in both, because I was in Near Eastern languages and in history. And I opted for the social sciences. So that's the first pillar, is really, the faculty. The second is the administration. Not only the deans, because there was also the Dean Levine in the humanities that was very supportive at the same time. But it was especially the chancellor and the vice chancellor and the assistant vice chancellor, Murphy, Franklin Murphy, and then Saxon and Svensson, who were very keenly and personally interested. So they had really a personal role in establishing the Institute. They had invited me several times at meetings with them personally to decide what direction it should go. The students is the third pillar. The archaeology program preceded the Institute. It was already there. So we already had students who had demonstrated the validity of the Research Institute as a parallel, in a sense, to the interdepartmental program. And so they made it all possible. And then third, the public. We didn't have yet the council, the director's council then, but the Friends. The Friends also preceded the Institute. They were established in New Year's Eve of 1965. And Sandy Elster, Ernestine's husband, was the first president. So we owe it to them as we owe it to you today, who are also representing the elite, as it were, of the public support that the Institute has. It was really a wonderful convergence of different interests and groups. And then comes Lloyd Cotsen. He was a good friend. Maybe if we can, Jason, put on a picture. You have seen it already, but I want to have it on partly because at least it stands for a few seconds so you can focus on it better. And you can see us at a younger age with Marilyn on the right and Ernestine in the middle, and of course Lloyd here. But this is also important because it takes me to the second comment I want to make, and that is about the places. It's true, as the dean was saying, that at the beginning we only had a drawer. It was a drawer in, it was the drawer in my office in Bunch Hall. So Bunch was the office I had as a history, on the history faculty. We did have a budget. It was not, but it was $5,000 for 1 year. That lasted really for just about a year or so. And this is the second, no, sorry, actually this is the third, because the second place we went to was actually the engineering department in Bolter Hall. It was the first office for the Institute, which was up on the first or second floor. And I had, the director's office was a small cubicle in the bottom, but it was next to the mainframe computer. We didn't have, in fact, one of the first things we bought was not a personal computer, but a key punch machine. And that was there. And then we were very near the place where the output was coming out of the wall from the machine. So the fan-fold paper output, that's how it worked back then. So since I was very much interested in computers at the beginning, that's why we ended up there. I had the little office downstairs and an office upstairs. From there, we came to Kinsey, Kaplan now. And this is Kinsey. It's a room in Kinsey where we were discussing the possibility of a joint project in the Caucasus with Lloyd. It didn't work out in the end. We went for a survey, but we decided not to start an excavation. But Lloyd came on a field trip to Syria for a month. We spent a month together, just the two of us. I had the Guggenheim to study the, let's say, Bedouins, not exactly Bedouins, but the Bedouins in the winter time, because I knew them in the summertime. And so we went for a month. We traveled throughout the steppe, slowly. And he was the photographer. Actually, he was the color photographer, because we had slides that were colored, and then our son Federico was with us too, and he was the black and white photographer. So it was a wonderful month with Lloyd, and we really, I remember when I first mentioned to him, why don't you come? I said, I'll make you an offer you can't refuse. And in fact, he didn't. He was with us. So this was the third. So we were in Kinsey until, thanks to Chris Donnan, really, we ended up in Fowler, because Chris was establishing the upper part of Fowler, and he made sure that there would be the ground floor for us, suitably without windows, since we are, as archaeologists, it seemed always perfectly fitting. So that's really the physical aspect. If you allow me just one more word about the initial initiatives. What you read at the beginning really represented the spirit of what, of how we felt. There was a great sense that everything was possible, even the Institute, that we could really make an impact on what archaeology is and means, but we had strongly practical limitations, space, money, but we had a great enthusiasm and willingness. So we were looking for things that wouldn't cost much money. And one was to confront each other. So we had, we had a number of self-host dinners, so like this, but everybody paid for himself, with the faculty and the students. So we had up to 30, 40 people, not every quarter, maybe once or twice a year. And we would talk about what we were doing. It was a really beautiful way of merging and of getting a sense of community, as it were, an intellectual community. The other thing that didn't cost much were joint seminars. And one director who cannot be with us today, Jim Sackett, was one of the ones with whom we had several of these, one in particular about style, which was quite memorable for us. And then publications. Publications did cost a little, but we could get grants for it. And it was really Ernestine who was our first full director. And Carol, who is also with us here today, was also, I think Carol came a little later, but if I am right. It was really something that we felt was important to develop. I was just reminding, as I was talking to somebody before, about the title. In fact, I think Randy, Monumenta Archeologica is the title of the series that we gave, and as you saw, she has there nicely the first volume by Maria Gimbutas, and then the 50th volume, which just came out. It's a beautiful matching of what we have for our celebration today. But I was telling Randy why we chose that title, which is, I think, fitting for a 50th anniversary as we look forward to the 75th and the 100th anniversary. The title comes from a verse of Horace, the Latin poet, who wrote saying that his poetry was going to last longer than bronze. And so he said, monumentum aere perennius. It's a monument which is more lasting than bronze. So we are here to testify to that.
I would now like to bring up Marek Poznansky, who was our director from 1984 to 1987, and who I fondly remember giving some amazing lectures as an undergraduate student when I was here. So it's nice to have him.
Dear fellows and ladies and gentlemen, it's a very great pleasure to come here this afternoon and talk to you about the Institute of Archaeology and to speak about the golden anniversary. I was the director from 1984 till December 1987, and my reason for leaving was not because I was chucked out or anything, but I was due for a sabbatical year in Ghana, and my transfer to being director of the African Studies Center at UCLA. 1984 to 87 were critical years. University Council gave us a very small grant for 3 years to justify keeping the institute. I was joined by Professors Sackett and Hill from anthropology. My first full appointment that proved essential to our contribution was that of Helle Gary to look after the public programs. Altogether, we held nearly 50 meetings and bolstered the Friends of Archaeology at the expense of the previous, more exclusive council that had featured on the Institute's program earlier. We also began Backdirt as a relatively short bulletin and as a means of conveying news of activities by UCLA archaeologists to both the Friends and the general public interested in archaeology. One initial basic problem was how to bring archaeologists together. Before 1984, there was plenty of activity, but very little cooperation between archaeologists in separate departments. The building of the Museum of Cultural History was decisive, as it was intended that every department involved in archaeology would share the ground level of the new museum. Most participating departments sought to claim the same amount of space they had in their own departments, which was inappropriate when specially designed laboratories were part of the plan for the new institute. The debate of how the space would be allotted was important for the future of the institute. The discussions that ensued in 1987 involved intensive negotiations with California government officials. We were finally able to get substantial financial support for the Institute from the Sacramento government, which amounted to the amount of over $1.25 million, which we didn't expect, but which enabled us to make our own way. We were also we had the only real window in the building that we claimed, and took a lot of arguing, we claimed we needed for publications. The result was that the Institute of Archaeology achieved its permanent status and a coherence of previously active archaeologists working in different geographical regions with separate but distinctive histories. In 1987, we were proud when the university finally told us that we had done enough to continue the Institute as a multi-departmental institute. We were sorry that one activity we attempted to make the Institute more interracial was not successful. We obtained an NEH grant to pay for scholarships for African American, Native American, and Asian American students. We filled the Native American slot, but for the others, we had no applicants. The situation today would be entirely different. There's much more interest in having Native Americans, Black Americans, and so on, working in the field of archaeology. I salute the exciting work that the Institute is involved in. Presumably and presently, its work in every field has been immensely successful, with great hopes for the future. So I'd like to thank you for the time that I've been allotted to speak to you. I think that the Institute is a great institution, and we all hope it will grow and prosper in the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Merrick. And now I would like to introduce Chip Stanish. I just realized his first name is Charles. No, I'm just kidding. It's my great pleasure to bring Chip Stanish up here, who was our director from 2001 to 2016.
Well, thank you so much, Jason. You're amazing. This guy's amazing. It's so much fun to be back here. The Faculty Center looks great. So in 1997, I came to UCLA. In 1998, Dean Scott Waugh asked me to be acting director for a year while Richard was on sabbatical. And I remember I went to Scott and I said, okay, what do you want me to do? What are my orders? And he said, I would like you to do absolutely nothing. And so I carried that out brilliantly in my mission. But then a couple years later, Richard went off to Santa Fe, and the dean named me director. So I'll never forget. I'd known Helly for a while, but the first person I went, hi, Helly, how's it going? And she's looking at me like, we're watching you. And so I said to her, Helly, is there anything I can do to make your job a little easier? And she goes, no. Helly and I became extremely close. And then, of course, Leventhal did a great job. He was able to get Mr. Cotsen heavily involved in the institution. And, of course, Jill was there. She and Helly, they really know how to run a show. It was quite amazing. I didn't realize how difficult it was, and I want to thank them. And then we had Julia Sanchez, who was our assistant director. She was amazing as well. We had the Friends of Archaeology, and absolutely love them. Well, wonderful, wonderful people. And as you know, they're the real lifeblood of any kind of institution like this. And they just provided so much hours of time and labor, and so we thank them so much. Then I met Charlie Steinmetz. Oh, man, yeah. Charlie's amazing. I mean, we became instant friends, like me and probably 40 other people. But Charlie and Lloyd taught me how to run a business. And I cannot thank you enough for that, because I was an academic and I had no clue. And I was coming up with some really silly ideas. And they sat me down and said, no, not necessary. I said, got it. Debbie and Walt, thank you so much. Dearest friends, they took me to Argentina. We went around the world together. It's always been a blast. Harris Bass, unfortunately Harris is not here today, Margaret, but they became very close friends. This, by the way, is the Manhattan Beach Mafia. And we have Patty and Roger, speaking of the Mafia. And Bruce Heckler, he's not in Manhattan Beach, but he's an honorary yeah, but he was there. And David Buchiever and Kathleen, fantastic people. Ernie Elster, I love you, Ernie. She was amazing. I moved to Florida, and one of my colleagues who works in Italy says, oh, there was this fantastic project in Malta. Someone named Elster, do you know her? I go, I know her. And Ernie graciously gave all of the documents to this guy who, he told me to tell you he's going to get them back after they're all scanned. That's good. And we had Marilyn Holmes, who is an institution. And Joanne and Jan, thank you very much. You guys, we went to Easter Island to visit them, and that was great. Lisa Mohan, I have to thank. It's a great story. Dawn and Marilyn Corbett donated $4 million, and so we wrote up a gift agreement. And Don comes in with his, his workout clothes that he always wore, and we say, "Oh, Don, here we have this. I know if you're interested." He goes, let's just get this over with, and he signed it right there. And so Debbie and I were looking. That was pretty funny. I got to thank Scott Wall. Barry Munitz, I want to thank you. Barry was head of the Getty, head of the Cal State system, pretty impressive guy. But he also was Lloyd's close confidant, and he did a lot to help us that a lot of you don't know, but I want to thank you, Barry, for that. And then, there was Shauna McCarthy and Evgenia and Shannon McGarry, and this is just a great group of people. Randy, amazing job. Unbelievable publications unit, folks. I mean, when everybody else was running away from doing monographs, we were running into it because monographs are absolutely essential. And we also have done, you have done some great work, and I really appreciate it. Of course, you're not gonna have a great institution like this without amazing faculty and amazing students, and we do. So I'm not gonna name all of you, you know who you are, but we hit number 1 in the National Research Council rankings in 2006, I believe it was. Yeah, baby. We were ones across the board, and I'll tell you, I wouldn't have been happier to win the $1 million lottery. It was just seeing when those rankings came out, and that really meant a lot to all of us and the Friends of Archaeology. But in the end, I was just a cheerleader. I was the one that asked Helly and Jill to throw great parties, and they did that job. But I was a cheerleader for almost 17 years. It was some of the best years of my life. The better ones are on their way, but still one of the absolute best years of my life. And I thank you so much to see all you wonderful people here. And the future is so bright, and you got a great guy here, so thank you. Oh, and Willicky, I love you. Sorry. You're amazing. Thanks.
Thank you, Chip. And now I would like to bring up Vilika Vendrich, who was our director, as many of you know, for many years, from 2017 to 2023.
So there were all these guys who did a great job, absolutely, and I learned a lot from them. From Merrick, I learned about African archaeology. And when I was working in Ethiopia, he gave me all his books. Merrick thank you for teaching me. Richard Leventhal was director when I arrived at UCLA in 2000. And I was very excited to be at Near Eastern Languages and Cultures. But I was especially excited about the Cotsen Institute of Archaeology. So much so that Richard at some point sat me down and said, you know, the department is the organization that gives you tenure, not the institute. Jim Sackett, we've had discussions. For me, he was this person that I only knew from book titles and the author name underneath it. And he actually was a person. So that was impressive. And Chip, you taught me how to party. And boy, did we. You also taught me that even if you have a difference of opinion, if someone insults you, you turn around and you don't take revenge, you support them. The way you deal with people is an example that I really learned from. It's so important. You don't take it personally, but you're here for the institution and you'll support your colleagues through everything. And that is being a great man. Can you please applaud? And then Giorgio, what did I learn from you? A lot. I learned from you being gracious, being a good archaeologist. I hope to learn some Italian from you. You haven't heard my Italian. I'm not going to try it right now. It's getting there. But these are all colleagues who had very, very big boots to fill. And when I became director, I thought, okay, what is my task? What do I think is important? And what I thought was important is this thought, garbage in, garbage out. If you do bad research, your results, your books, whatever they are, will be garbage. What we need are good labs with good science that supports our archaeology. We need good theory, but we also need good practice. So I've worked extremely hard in building our labs, in especially building the digital labs, the digital publication, the easel, which I keep forgetting what it stands for exactly.
Experimental and archaeological.
Thank you, Vanessa. That. And of course, what I inherited from my predecessors, the publications, which are so important. I want to give a shout out to someone who's not here, Sebastian. I'm sitting with his family, and you guys are great, but Sebastian is the one who dragged you in here, don't forget. And he started the Teen Friends of Archaeology, which I think is an amazing way of getting the next generation in. Because archaeology is not about the past, it's about the future. And because it's about the future, I am so thankful that my successor is Jason, who I have helped get to UCLA. I know that he and Justin and Stephen are part of this new generation with a lot of energy and a lot of ideas. I have all confidence in the next 50 years. Thank you guys for being here and for taking it over.
Thank you so much, Vilica. I now would like to introduce Thiago Buglieri, a faculty member of conservation of cultural heritage program and one of our IDPs within the Cotsen, who's going to just talk a little bit about, I think, drawing from remarks from Glenn Wharton, who is not able to be with us today, about how we're imagining the conservation program to be thinking about the future.
I would like to personally thank you first of all for your words today, because it's very, very inspiring, especially for new generations and assistant professors like me. So thank you so much for sharing all of this. It is with great pleasure and admiration that I stand here today. I want to congratulate our distinguished Cotsen and all of you who make this place remarkable institute, consistently committed to excellence in research, teaching, outreach, and innovation. As we gather here to celebrate its achievements, we are not merely acknowledging a series of accomplishments, but recognizing a beacon of intellectual prowess and a catalyst for positive change in our ever-evolving world. Along with the Cotsen, the UCLA Getty Conservation Program is also celebrating an anniversary. So we are getting 20 years old this year, and our first MA students arrived in 2004. Over the past 20 years, we have established an international reputation as the premier program for studying the conservation of archaeological and indigenous cultural heritage. And we were funded by the Getty Conservation Institute, which built state-of-the-art trainings labs at the Getty Villa in Malibu. Although not structurally part of the Getty, we maintain close relations with their scientists and conservators in our research and also teaching. We are very proud to be part of the Cotsen Institute of Archaeology, along with our assistant program of archaeology. And in 2019, we launched our PhD program, which allows us to produce conservation scientists and scholars along with conservators from our MA program who preserve individual artifacts and provide collections care. 2019 was also the year that our current chair arrived, Glenn Wharton, who apologized for not being here today. He is taking care of his husband, who recently had surgery, and these are Glenn's words, and I'm also glad to say that Harvey, his husband, is doing well. So since Glenn's arrival, we have adopted 3 values associated with our mission statement that are sustainability, community-engaged practice, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. These values permeate all of our research and teaching. We are working also to change the demographics of our field by training people from indigenous and other unrepresented communities to care for their own cultural heritage. We are working to, among the activities we conducted to accomplish these, we hold annual summer workshops to introduce underrepresented people to the field, sponsored by the Mellon Foundation and directed by Professor Ellen Prustin. We also recently hired Anya Dani to serve as our Director of Community Engagement and Inclusion, and she is involved in many activities, including establishing partnerships with African American collections and scholars. All our faculty, including myself, works with indigenous community-based participatory research in technical art history and conservation science, are engaged with those efforts. And we all heartfeltly congratulate and thank the Cotsen Institute of Archaeology, its members, alumni, and supporters. So thank you so much, and we can't wait to see the Cotsen futures.
Thank you, Thiago. And now I'd like to bring up my friend, colleague, and often co-conspirator, Stephen Acobato, who is our current chair of archaeology, who will talk about the future. Well, it's on the thing. I don't know. Surprise.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I didn't know that I was supposed to give a talk, but I'm Steven Acabado. Together with Jason, we're plotting to take over the world. I think I have one more year as the chair of the IDP, but the IDP program preceded the Cotsen by about 2 years. And in at least the last decade, we've been very successful in making archaeology more accessible, more inclusive, and our work is very engaged. As Vilika mentioned, Jason, Justin, and I, and some of our colleagues are redefining what is archaeology. We're not just a study of the past. I know archaeology with archaic means the past, but we're here to study the past to help us understand what the present and to help us prepare for a more inclusive future. And so thank you to our donors. Without you, we won't have students who are able to go out in the field, focus on their studies and not be backed down by teaching, by working. I know as a graduate student and some of my faculty colleagues here could attest, working and being in a graduate program is sometimes stressful, but with the help of our alumni, with donors, and of course our administrators, we are able to make archaeology more inclusive, more diverse, and redefining what it is. I know Indiana Jones is very helpful, but that's not what we do. And so, again, 50 years, and I look forward to spending the rest of my career with the Cotsen. Thank you.
All right, I think I'm last. I'll be brief. I first off just want to thank all of you for being here, our wonderful donors, our students, our staff, everybody. I mean, this is an amazing institution, and I feel very, very lucky to be here. I also want to thank Vilika for holding my hand to many of these things, Charlie for also holding my hand more recently, and Dean Valenzuela, and everybody else who's just been so kind and generous in helping me figure out how to transition into this really important and humbling role. I'm also going to pass around my wine glass in a minute so that we can put some money in there to buy us a second window in the Cotsen, has been brought up. Or maybe we should just all move into the seminar room and we can share the one window that looks out into the courtyard. But we love being down there despite recent aquatic events. Richard Leventhal is not here, but I do want to give a shout out to him because I have quite fond memories of awkwardly going to his office in the Fowler in A207 sometime around 1998, 97. At the time, I was an anthropology major who had dropped out of school many times. I had failed Gene Hudson's Intro to Archaeology course, and I dropped out of school, and then I went back and took it again, and I got a C when I took it the second time. So that's on my transcript. I ran into Kevin Terracciano yesterday, who's department chair in history, and he said, "Hey, how's it going? How's the new position going?" And I said, "Oh, it's going really well." And also, remember that F you gave me in colonial Indians of Mexico? And I went on to get a PhD in indigenous studies in Mexico, and so that was an interesting conversation in graduate school or applying to graduate school. So yeah, it's good to be here. I was banging on Richard Leventhal's door to see if he would supervise a potential honors thesis for a kind of confused, semi-motivated student, which I was, by the way, rejected from that honors program in anthropology, so I didn't get into that program, which is why I tell my undergraduate honors thesis students now, I said, it's a tough program. You should feel lucky to be there. Although I'm sure it was much easier to get into the program when I was a student than it is now. I think it's gotten a lot more competitive. But at the time as well, in the Cotsen, in the kind of mid to late 90s, I was a work study student in Gene Arnold's Channel Islands lab, a lab that I currently occupy now. And when I moved in, and Villika said, "What do you want to do in this lab? You know, would you be okay moving into Gene's lab?" And I said, "That would be, for me, the most amazing full circle moment would be able to get back into that lab." And she said, "Well, we can get you all new furniture." And I said, "I want to keep all the same furniture. Those are the chairs that I sat in. Those are the chairs that I was confused in." And so if you come in the lab now, it's a study in the archaeological past. And I was in that lab for many, many, many hours, and that sound of like, which is just tweezers and a paper plate looking at broken Olivella shell beads. I did that for many, 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 many years. And I want to thank Marilyn Holmes for being in that room with me and kind of encouraging me as she did my entire undergraduate career, including every time I'm at a conference. Marilyn is and she's there. She's the first person in the front room, and so she was someone who early on in Gene's lab and in Tom's lab really supported me. So I just want to just recognize Marilyn. But I kind of wondered to this day. I'm not really sure what Gene saw in a kind of lost kid with a green mohawk hiding it under a baseball cap for my job interview. But I want to just give a shout out to Jean here with some of her students, many of whom were also, fundamental to my. Oops, this shouldn't be. No, damn you! It's ruining all my slides here. Okay, I'm gonna. This is like the element of surprise has just now been lost. But let's just. I'll just give you this. Okay. Don't look at the left. But working with Gene really cemented my love of archaeology, and I think also the kind of calming and therapeutic benefits of sorting microdebitage. But I also have to say that it was her early mentorship that made me feel so welcome in the Cotsen and in the field of archaeology more general. And I do want to say that it's something that over the many years that I've been associated with the Cotsen, that I've seen so many of my wonderful colleagues just embody this idea that we love what we do, but we also love our students and we want them to really thrive. And so I'm just so grateful for all of my faculty who are here, who I've had the chance to work with and who are current faculty, former faculty, those in this room who I think really embody the spirit of what it means to be an archaeologist and to be supporting the research so we can understand the past as well as ourselves. And so I also just want to give all the faculty in this room a round of applause for all that they've done. I also just want to say thank you to Helly Gary, who, like I said, I'm going to send her a bunch of pictures on Facebook, and Lady Harrington, another person who was so important to me when I was a student, and making me feel really, really welcome. My time in the Cotsen was some of my fondest undergraduate memories, including a lot of these adventures that I had with Richard Lejeune, who's not here today. Here's Richard in the middle there with Alex Bereshka, Jenny Popper, Carol Schultz, Dave Carballo. This was my first field season with Richard as an undergraduate student at UCLA. And I have fond memories of those times, including I didn't know Richard. I had met him maybe 3 times before he invited me to run his lab in Tlaxcala, but he mostly invited me because I knew how to drive a stick, and he did not. And I don't know if everyone remembers the green Bronco that the Cotsen used to have that nobody could drive except for me, apparently. And so I remember getting in the car with Richard and being like, okay, this is going to be an awkward 6-day, just me and you in the car trip. I brought a big box of CDs, and then I get in the car and it's only a tape deck. And so then, but for 6 days, Richard and I just had these kind of amazing conversations, and he really went out of his way during that time to talk to me about archaeology, to get me excited about the discipline, and also to just make sure that we, on our trip, stopped and saw archaeological sites that were of interest to me, including Paquimé in northern Chihuahua, as well as visiting sites on the West Coast on our way back. Things that he did not have to do, but really went above and beyond to make me feel, welcome. All right, there's me with more hair. Yeah, so it's a blacker hair at least. But this was my first season as an undergraduate in the Cotsen, in the field, and it was I can't tell you how life-changing it really was. And I get really mushy about all this stuff, both my time with Richard and other folks in Mexico, but also this guy, Tom Wake, who's not here today, who was someone who got me super excited about archaeology. This is us out at Stunt Ranch during a spring field program that Tom was running, where he was mostly just picking up snakes and other things and chasing me with them in an attempt to teach me about nature by making me more afraid of snakes. But anyways, and yeah, I just like to kind of, we've aged just a little bit, but I'm happy to be neighbors again with Tom. All this being said, I've said it before, I'll say it again, it does feel surreal to be in this position where for the last 5 months, many of you know, and you've been helping me along, just trying to get my bearings and figure out how to work with our wonderful staff, students, faculty, and our many generous supporters who make this place the wonderful locale that it is. And yeah, when I say that I'm humbled, that's an understatement of epic proportions. And I don't think I can today or ever really be able to come up with the words to express my excitement and gratitude for being responsible for a place that literally changed my life in so many ways. But I will say that I do come to this position with a commitment to honoring the legacy of both the place while building on the work of my wonderful predecessors, many of whom are here and many whom I'm grateful to call friends and mentors for the last 2 decades. As we reflect on the last 50 years of the Institute, as well as our present and our future, I just want to say that I'm incredibly excited about the new initiatives that we are trying to develop. And I think first and foremost, we have a big ship, a very, very big ship. And that ship does not run, and I think all of my predecessors will tell you that it's the staff who make our boat float. And without our staff, we would be at the bottom of the ocean. And one of the things that I really want to come in is to figure out how I can support them better to make this whole thing run smoothly. We're a big institution, we're a big bureaucracy a lot of times, but the core of keeping things every day is our wonderful staff. And so I just want to acknowledge them one more time. I mean, and I think that and so I am committed to helping them to do their job better and to feel supported and to help us do what we all want to do. I'm also excited to expand our growing programs, including the Way Station Initiative. We had a wonderful workshop yesterday. I'm happy to talk more about that after this. Keeping our amazing labs going is another crucial initiative. And then also for me personally, it's been mentioned many times today already, is trying to expand our engagement with the general public. I think that the groundbreaking research that we do in the Institute is so important, and we just need to figure out ways to better translate that for different audiences around the globe and across various mediums. And this includes creating new, and I would hope formalized relationships with our underserved communities, especially underserved K-12 schools across Southern California and elsewhere. Because I think for many of us who come to archaeology, it was this thing that was kicked off when we were young. And it's just this bug, whether we went into academia or whether we found it again later on as adults, but it's this early connection to the past and to the excitement of archaeology that I think many of us share. And so that is something that I'm really excited to develop more. Also working with our wonderful publication staff. I want to thank Aaron. I want to thank Rondi. Also, happy birthday again. We have an amazing publication house in-house. It's the top one, I think, in the discipline of archaeology, and it's so important. And I'm just excited to have that, to be able to work with them into the future. Okay, and yeah, last but not least, and most importantly, I just want to say that I am working so diligently for all of you, so that we can formalize karaoke at all of these events. There it is. to my wife and one of our esteemed alumni, Dave Carballo. And just so you know, there's like 4 cases of beer and a karaoke machine in the Cotsen, so we're going to migrate over there after this. If you are excited about that, I'm offering that up, so please come join us. Okay, so I just want to end and just say I was a student here many years ago who struggled to find my place, and I didn't think I was ever going to finish, much less go on to graduate school or any of the things that came after that. And the Cotsen Institute of Archaeology and the brilliant and kind people who occupy this place served as my oasis, like a place that really saved me. And I think it was my social lifeline during many difficult college years and my intellectual home for far beyond that. And every day that I'm able to walk into that building with the one window, I am reminded, though, how special that place is for our staff, for our students, for our faculty, and all of our many visitors who get excited and inspired by this thing that we call archaeology and all that it has to offer. So in the years to come, I look forward to continuing to grow alongside this wonderful institution that's given me so much. Thank you for being with us, and hopefully we'll see you over there in a little bit.